America has often been called the greatest nation on earth. It was founded in the belief that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are God-given rights to every man. With foundations like this, our nation has truly been the land of limitless opportunity. But what are the fruits of such beliefs? How have we been shaped by such noble ideas? Listen to the following declarations and tell me what you hear. I deserve everything I want. My version of the truth is obviously right. The government exists to serve me. No one can judge me. How did we go from such nobility to such selfishness and pride? Welcome to the United States of Deception. So, Pastor Steve, your book, Walking in Truth in a World of Lies, is divided up into 3 sections. The first section is called Deception in Western Culture. And in that section, you identified 6 different spheres of society in which these lies are coming to us, contributing to and making up this world of lies. In this interview, I want to focus on 3 of those spheres: academics, big business, and politics. And as we read your first section, it's, very clear. Life in America has changed drastically 150 years ago to today. And there have been thousands of books explaining these changes, but I want to get your perspective on this. What would you say are 1 or 2 of the biggest and most driving influences that have led us to where we are today?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked it the way you asked it, because I was going to relate to that chapter on big business, where I give a history a little bit about what life was like 150 years ago. And I basically said something to the effect that life was pretty much the same for 6,000 years until the Industrial Revolution set in place, and then things started changing. And at the end of the 19th century, radical changes began to happen. You know, the inventions of the day: light bulb, electricity, cars, planes, all these things. Radio came into emergence in the first 20 years, and then television, so on. Okay, so there was a tremendous technological move forward in the world. What that did was made it possible to give ourselves the indulgences that our flesh really wants at a level that the world has never before known. I mean, just think in terms of any king of history, back in the day. What king would have a microwave? Yeah. It's just something we take for granted. It's nothing. You want something to eat, and you don't want to wait for someone to go out and kill a deer and bring it in and dress it out and cook it up, several hours or whatever. Right. No, I'm just going to go into my refrigerator and I'm going to get a chunk of meat, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Everything is instantaneous. If I want something, it's there right now practically. Yeah. We can constantly gratify and indulge our carnal desires. And as I said in one of the earlier interviews, it is the desire that drives us and propels us through the walk of life. And so when you have opened up a whole new realm of possibilities, then you can start really giving yourself over to your own particular lusts, your own particular idolatries, forms of idolatry. You go down that path for a while as a culture, and you're laying yourself open for all the lies of socialism that have come into our nation through, left-leaning politics and through the academic realm. You're opening yourself up to all that other kind of stuff because people are getting what they want. That's why truth has become so submerged and devalued, and why deception can have free reign practically in our culture.
One of the things that you did in your book was you described what it was like to live in the late 1800s. None of us have even the least bit of comprehension what that was actually like. And as we look back then to where we are today, we just see this great upward trend in so many spheres of society. Your book is a warning, which indicates regression and danger rather than this great progress. What are some of the ways that we have regressed, and why is it so dangerous to be an American in the 21st century?
Well, as I said before, the technological advances have made way for people to indulge their carnal nature like never before. So, there are degrees of wickedness. There are degrees of evil. For instance, okay, we had world wars in the past, Mesopotamia and so on, the Persians and so on, the Greeks. They conquered people. There was horrible things that happened. But how could you begin to compare that with the carnage of World War I or World War II that was almost 100 million people, casualties? How could you compare the thousands that died in one versus the millions in another? You see what I'm saying? Or the technological, like back in ancient times, you could find sexual figurines or drawings or something that could kind of give your mind a sense about, okay, that's wicked. It's evil to have that kind of thing. And it was evil back then. But how could that compare to full color, pornographic movies where you're seeing every single thing and all its vibrant colors and all that? You see what I'm saying? There's degrees. And the more or the deeper level of evil that more people can give over to is giving the enemy greater latitude and influence in the world at large. So yeah, we have progressed in a lot of good ways, like hospitals and medicine and stuff like that. And those are positives. There's a lot of good things that have happened. But alongside of that progress, humanly speaking, has been opening avenues that should never have been opened, that have allowed us to go into very dark areas that have affected mankind. And we can never go back, we can never go back to the 1880s and what life was like then.
Yeah, just the loss of innocence alone for a 6-year-old. I mean, we hear it over and over in the guys who come to our residential program. By the age of 10 or 12, I'm hooked on pornography.
Yeah.
Not just have seen it, but I'm hooked on it. I've developed a life of deceit and cover-up and a double life by the age of 12.
Unimaginable. Unimaginable in the 1800s. I mean, just wow. It would take you a long time, decades, to get to that level.
Yeah. Last year, Forbes.com released a poll, and they were looking at what are the most trusted professions and the least trusted professions. Right up there at the top, we had nurses and everyone in the medical profession. We had teachers. And I expected to see car salesmen at the very bottom. But actually, members of Congress, the last and least trusted profession in America. 58% of people said, I don't trust them. And we've all heard the phrase, the end justifies the means, and that's why we don't, because we know that they're willing to lie, cheat, steal to accomplish their end game. But what does that reveal about them, and what does that reveal about our society as a whole?
Well, first of all, I do want to point out that just because people trust the medical profession and teachers as the most trustworthy doesn't necessarily mean that's true either. Because our teachers, as you know, one of the chapters in my book is all about the deception in the academic realm. And the medical profession is full of lies. You know, people being told they need surgeries they don't need, and drugs, the drug culture, the pharmaceuticals are laden with deception. So, you know, that whole thing, who cares what that poll says? It's not reality. But anyway, the point you're getting at is that the perception is that members of Congress, meaning politicians, are the least trustworthy of everyone, including used car salesmen.
Yeah.
Personally, I believe on the left side of the aisle of Congress, there is a much greater willingness to do the things you said. Lie, cheat, deceive, anything to win the power and keep the power. On the right side, it occurs, and it does. I mean, our president, I hate to say it, but the guy does not have a real good grasp on truth. It's so unfortunate because he's doing so many good things. But man, yeah, it's a shame. So yeah, politics is all about presenting image, you know, and whether you're on the left side or the right side is going to depend on what you consider is truth. So if you are a leftist out of Berkeley and you're hearing AOC talk about, you know, doing one of her rants about the horrible things of American culture and so on, every word out of her mouth is dripping with truth to you. And you listen to Mike Pence, let's say, who's not Donald Trump. He is an honest man, and he's espousing more of a conservative viewpoint. You would think that's all lies. You can, so you know what you want is going to determine how you perceive truth to be. And in the realm of politics, so it's all about playing to your base and trying to win the independents and presenting your message in such a way that you get both. For instance, if a guy, okay, let me use myself. In my book, my autobiography, Out of the Depths of Sexual Sin, I was just going through it yesterday, as a matter of fact. I had a reason to get into it, and I started reading. I haven't read it in years. And wow, this is interesting. I just started reading some of the stuff, and it's like, man, I was brutally honest about myself. What a creep I was. In fact, I talk about it in this book. You know, just how low down I was. What a conniver, a manipulator, a liar. I was a criminal. I was all those things, and I am very open about what I was because I do that because I want God to get the glory for the life that's been transformed. Okay, that's why I do it. But I don't think I would be a great candidate to run for Senate, because all they would do is they would bring up the things that I was 40 years ago, and they would just keep showing that, keep showing that, keep showing that. There's no grasp or concern. It's not about, let me say it this way, it's not about the reality of your character. It is about the image that you are able to put forth and sustain to the American public. That's what it's all about. And that's what people subconsciously, instinctually understand, that all I'm seeing here is an image. And I will say, you know, I do have my own bent, but I will say that it's far more true on the left side of the aisle than the right. I believe that most conservatives are fairly honest, and would be even more honest if the system was built around honesty.
Yeah.
I think most of them would be very honest. On the left, they have an agenda, and is very much just keeping in line with the way that the communists operated. It is all about getting power and keeping power. The end justifies the means. It doesn't matter, lie, cheat, steal, whatever. Get in power and hold power. And that is what drives the leftist agenda. So, yeah, I think those things are why people instinctually know not to trust politicians.
You've said in other places that false teachers are created because of the demand for false teaching. And do you think that that's the same case here, that, okay, politicians know that the way it works is you put forth an image? Is that also because people just want that? They want the image. The American people don't care about character. They just care about the image.
In a sense, it's the same in that false teachers, what their primary motivation is to give people what people want to hear, because that will make them like me, and therefore I will receive something for myself out of it,
Okay.
you know, money or whatever. And that is true in both those cases, you know, to where the American public wants what it wants, and, you know, at least on the side of the Democrats, which are all about creating this thing of, we want to give you. You know, the rich people are holding out on you, and we want to get a hold of some of their money. It's not right that they have all the money. You know, their whole rant, and you know, and we want to give it to you, and people buy into that because they want. I want more money. I want to pay less taxes. I want, you know, all these benefits from government, and so they will buy into that message because of that basic desire being driven by lust.
In the first section of your book, most of the chapter titles are addressed in the form of a question. Has media been lying to you? Has big business been lying to you? And one of the chapters is, has the academic system been lying to you? And obviously, we assume that your answer is yes. You touched on the socialistic bent in academics earlier on. What are some of the other ways you see the academic system lying to us?
The academic system is deeply affected by the scientific field, and they play off each other, really, is the reality. And the premise, you have to understand, the premise in science, in the scientific realm, is there is no God, and we have to explain what is going on physiologically in the universe, past and present. And so they go into their studies of the subjects of science and all that's involved with it with the preconceived understanding that there is no God. And the whole concept of Christianity, or even Judaism or whatever, any religion, is to them like an old wives' tale. You know, it's just something. It's okay. Dumbbells need something, you know, to hold on to, but we're dealing with facts here. Well, that would be okay if it was true, but it's not true. You know, one of the illustrations I touched on in that chapter, especially in regards to evolution, that is being taught to our children, is that like empirical study of something. Like if you put two chemicals together, there is a certain reaction. And you do that time after time after time. It is a proven fact by something you can see happening. But so much of the scientific facts that are put forth, and also the same thing in the scholastic system, the facts and what they teach children is all based on their own preconceived notions of life without a God in existence. So they have to come up with different explanations, and thus evolution. And in fact, really, Darwin, he said something to the effect, if I remember correctly, that he didn't want to believe in God, because he didn't want to have to deal with the issues of his own life in that regard. He didn't want to be held responsible for the way he lived his life. So it was like he just deceived himself, and he came up with this whole evolutionary concept. And that is what came forth out of the mid-19th century and gained momentum over the next 100 years or so, until now it is pervasive in the academic system. Evolution is a powerful force in the academic realm because it has taken God out of the picture. And once God is out of the picture, all the Christian morals are out of the picture. Truth is relative, as we've been talking about, and all of that. Get God out of the way, and then we can present to you truth as we see it. And it is truth without God.
All of the things that we've talked about today are really helpful in explaining why we've had this spiritual regression. And I think that hindsight being 2020, looking back over the last 50 years, a lot of people would say that the church failed in a number of key ways. And there's a lot of disagreements over how the church failed, what it should have done, what it should not have done. I'd like to get your take on that, because I think that what we should have done is what we should be doing now. So what are some of those things?
Well, to arrive at truth, you have to be close to the truth, which is Jesus Christ. That's that. And, as I've said over and over in these interviews, we are driven by desire in life, meaning we humans. We are driven by desire. And if your desires are taking you away from God, you are going away from truth. So let me just bring it down to this. Whatever brings us close to God is the right thing to do. And whatever takes us away from God is, at the very least, should be limited and should be held in suspicion or highly suspect. Let me just give you an example. Television. Let's just talk about television for a minute. I've made no bones about it in, many sermons down through the years. I don't have any qualms with Christians watching an old movie out of the 40s or 50s, or watching HGTV for a while or something. The problem is that people, and most Christians, I would include in this, watch it for hours. And they're not all that discerning on what they're watching. So in other words, they're opening their hearts up to all the garbage that can come in. Now, not many Christians limit their television watching to HGTV, old historical documentaries, movies out of the 40s and 50s and stuff like that. If they did and limited the time, okay, I don't think the Lord has a problem with that. The problem is that they just allow their minds to be saturated with the garbage coming forth from our culture, which is anti-God and life without God. And they are being heavily influenced by that, and it is taking away, it is sapping out of them the hunger to know the Lord, to walk with the Lord. So they'll put in their little appearance at church on Sunday, but the reality is through the rest of the week, their hearts are fully given over to the world and the things of the world. That's where we have gone astray for the most part, as far as I'm concerned. That kind of thing. Television watching is just an aspect of it, but it's like a microcosm of the bigger picture, which is trading in the things of God for the things of the world. And here we are, 2020, and the church is in real trouble. And it is not getting better, and it won't get better until Christians repent of their worldliness and all of that, and really start turning to God in a very real way. Then they will come near the truth, and the truth will set them free.
Okay, so as a quick follow-up, I think when most people hear you say something like that, they might think, okay, I get that that would be good for an individual, how an individual responds to truth. But by and large, I think a lot of people would think, well, the way the church has failed is that we didn't get into the apologetics game quick enough, or we didn't have legislators in place who could stand on the side of truth. That's how the church failed. Organization and programs and influence. But you're talking more about the corporate body being in a certain kind of a spiritual condition. Do you really believe that that would have affected the culture or held back the tide of evil in America?
Yes, absolutely. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the world." Well, what is the salt? It is a purifying agent. It's an agent that stops corruption from taking place in meat and so on. That is what Jesus was referring to. If Christians were living at the level that they have been called to live at, we would have had a tremendous impact on the culture. Would there still be evil? Yes, there would still be evil, but it would not be as pervasive as it is. It would not have control like it has in today's world. And many more people would be coming to the Lord, for sure.
Do you believe that there's any hope for the church today to, like, have we passed the point of no return?
I tend to believe our only hope is persecution. I tend to think that's true. And I don't want to believe that. I'm like Darwin. Can we just act like that's not there? But I tend to think that that is what's going to separate the men from the boys. That is what is going to drive true believers to their knees. That is what's going to cause them to really start crying out to God in earnestness. And it will do away with all the gray area in the church. It will create a red-hot body of Christ. And yes, a world that hates them for it and persecutes them even more, perhaps. But wow, man, would I love to see the church on fire for God. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I would prefer that to what we have today.